these markings on the ground here in the mountains of Ararat, that these are the last remnants of Noah's Ark, kind of shipwrecked, if you like, here on this mountainside.
For centuries, one of history's greatest mysteries has refused to disappear. The story of Noah's Ark has inspired explorers, scientists, theologians, and skeptics alike, all searching for evidence that the legendary vessel ever existed. Most expeditions have focused on the towering slopes of Mount Ararat in eastern Turkey, believing the biblical account pointed directly to its icy summit. Yet after decades of expensive expeditions, dangerous climbs, and countless disappointments, a different location has quietly drawn the attention of a growing number of researchers. Hidden several miles away lies a strange, boat-shaped formation known as the Durupinar site. From the ground, it appears to be nothing more than another rocky ridge. But viewed from above, its outline is remarkably symmetrical. Stretching roughly 515 feet from end to end, its dimensions closely resemble the measurements given in the Book of Genesis for Noah's Arkansas. That extraordinary coincidence has fueled debate for decades. Is it simply an unusual geological formation, or could it preserve the remains of something far older? The formation first attracted international attention in 1959, when Turkish Army Captain İlhan Durupinar photographed the unusual shape during an aerial reconnaissance mission. Military officials noted its striking resemblance to a massive ship, and the images quickly spread among researchers interested in biblical archaeology. Although government surveys were conducted, no firm conclusion was reached, and the mystery gradually faded from public attention. Local villagers, however, never forgot about it. Long before archaeologists arrived with satellites and sophisticated instruments, people living in the region had their own name for the formation. They simply called it the ship. Stories passed down through generations claimed that an enormous vessel had once rested on the mountainside after a catastrophic flood. Whether those traditions reflected history or folklore remained impossible to prove, but they added another layer to an already fascinating mystery. Interest in the site returned decades later as new technology made it possible to investigate buried structures without large-scale excavation. Instead of relying only on surface observations, researchers brought ground-penetrating radar capable of producing detailed images beneath the soil. Unlike ordinary surveys, this equipment could reveal differences in density, hidden layers, and geometric patterns concealed deep underground. When the first scans appeared on researchers' monitors, the results immediately raised eyebrows. Rather than displaying the random patterns expected from natural rock, the radar images revealed long, straight lines running parallel to one another. Several intersected at angles rarely produced by natural geological processes. Even more intriguing were horizontal layers appearing one above another, separated by vertical divisions. To some investigators, the images resembled compartments within a large structure rather than ordinary volcanic formations. The findings attracted immediate attention because they echoed one of the most familiar descriptions in Genesis. According to the biblical account, Noah was instructed to build the ark with 3 decks and numerous internal rooms. The radar data appeared to show multiple levels separated into distinct sections. While such images could not prove the existence of an ancient ship, they certainly challenged the assumption that the formation was simply another ridge of rock. Researchers remained cautious. Ground-penetrating radar does not identify specific materials with complete certainty. Instead, it reveals differences beneath the surface that require further investigation. Even so, many members of the survey admitted privately that the patterns deserved much closer examination than anyone had anticipated. The mystery deepened when scientists expanded their investigation beyond imaging alone. They began collecting soil samples from inside the boundaries of the formation and comparing them with samples taken only a short distance away. Under normal circumstances, neighboring areas on the same mountainside should display nearly identical chemical characteristics. Instead, laboratory analysis suggested noticeable differences. The soil covering the formation contained higher concentrations of organic carbon than surrounding areas. Researchers also observed unusual mineral distributions, including traces of iron compounds inconsistent with nearby volcanic deposits. Even the vegetation appeared subtly different. Grass growing directly above the formation showed variations in color and growth patterns compared with plants surrounding it. Such differences do not automatically indicate the presence of an ancient wooden structure. Numerous natural processes can influence soil chemistry over thousands of years. Nevertheless, Some scientists suggested that the findings were consistent with what might be expected if large quantities of organic material had gradually decomposed beneath the surface over an extremely long period. The word consistent quickly became important. Responsible researchers avoided making dramatic claims. They emphasized that consistency does not equal proof. A scientific hypothesis must survive repeated testing before extraordinary conclusions can be accepted. Yet the possibility that multiple independent observations were pointing toward the same explanation made the site increasingly difficult to ignore. Adding even more intrigue were reports of petrified material discovered near portions of the formation. Samples recovered from several locations appeared different from the volcanic rocks making up the surrounding mountain. If these materials truly originated as ancient wood that had undergone mineral replacement over immense spans of time, they would represent one of the most significant discoveries ever associated with the site. Laboratories have continued examining such samples, though experts remain divided over their interpretation. Some researchers argue that unusual rock formations can easily resemble petrified wood, while others believe additional microscopic analysis is warranted before drawing conclusions. Meanwhile, another mystery waits in the valley below. Scattered across the landscape stand several enormous carved stones unlike anything else in the region. These massive upright blocks contain large circular holes near their upper sections. Local tradition identifies them as ancient anchor stones connected with Noah's Ark. To modern ears, the idea sounds almost unbelievable. Yet the stones themselves undeniably exist, and they have puzzled visitors for decades. Each weighs several tons, making transportation difficult even with modern equipment. Their exact purpose remains uncertain, and no universally accepted explanation has emerged. Some researchers believe they could have served ceremonial or architectural functions unrelated to any flood narrative. Others argue that similar pierced stones appear in ancient maritime contexts around the Mediterranean, leading supporters of the Ark theory to suggest they may have acted as stabilizing dragstones for a massive vessel. Although the evidence remains inconclusive, the stones continue to attract attention because several appear aligned in the general direction of the boat-shaped formation. Whether that alignment reflects deliberate placement or simple coincidence is still debated. One individual who became deeply convinced of the site's importance was Ron Wyatt. Wyatt was not a professionally trained archaeologist. He worked as a nurse from Tennessee, yet devoted decades of his life to investigating biblical locations. After seeing photographs of the Durupinar Formation during the late 1970s, he became convinced that he had found the true resting place of Noah's Ark. Over the next 2 decades, he organized repeated expeditions, collected samples, photographed unusual features, and argued that visible ridges represented the remains of a massive ship's internal framework. He claimed to have discovered petrified wood, metallic fasteners, and structural ribs buried beneath the soil. His conclusions generated enormous controversy. Supporters praised his determination and viewed him as a courageous explorer willing to challenge academic assumptions. Critics argued that many of his interpretations lacked rigorous scientific verification and dismissed several of his broader archaeological claims entirely. For years, mainstream researchers largely ignored Wyatt's work. Ironically, some of today's investigations have reopened questions that many believed had already been settled. While modern scientists have not endorsed Wyatt's conclusions, several recent surveys have documented features remarkably similar to observations he described decades ago. The boat-like dimensions are real. The unusual internal radar patterns are real. The chemical differences in the soil are real. None of these observations proves the site is Noah's Ark, but together they present a far more complicated picture than many expected. As interest in the formation grew, researchers realized that non-invasive surveys could answer only part of the mystery. Radar images and soil chemistry suggested something unusual beneath the surface, yet they could not reveal exactly what occupied those hidden spaces. To move beyond speculation, investigators prepared for the next and most ambitious stage of the project. Instead of merely scanning the formation from above, they planned to drill carefully selected boreholes into locations identified by radar as containing the strongest structural anomalies. Through these narrow openings, they hoped to lower specialized cameras capable of providing humanity's very first glimpse inside whatever lay hidden beneath the mountain. What those cameras would eventually reveal would become the most controversial chapter in the entire investigation. With drilling location selected, the research team began one of the most delicate phases of the investigation. Guided by ground-penetrating radar maps, engineers slowly bored narrow holes into the boat-shaped formation. Every inch mattered. If an artificial structure truly existed beneath the surface, careless drilling could damage evidence that had remained undisturbed for thousands of years. According to researchers involved with the project, the drill encountered changing layers as expected while passing through soil and compacted volcanic material. But at greater depth, the resistance reportedly became different from what geologists anticipated. The drill bits returned carrying residue that appeared unlike the surrounding rock, prompting additional laboratory examination before investigators proceeded further. The next step attracted even greater attention. Specialized borehole cameras equipped with powerful lights and high-resolution lenses were carefully lowered through the newly drilled openings. Their purpose was simple: document whatever existed beneath the surface without performing a large-scale excavation. The first images were far from dramatic. Dust, darkness, and uneven surfaces filled the screens as operators adjusted the lighting and focus. Gradually, however, shapes began emerging from the shadows. Some observers reported seeing flat surfaces intersecting at nearly right angles, creating the appearance of enclosed spaces rather than random rock fractures. Other images seemed to display layered textures that some investigators believed resembled grain patterns often associated with petrified wood. These observations quickly spread across documentaries, social media, and online discussions. Yet it is important to separate confirmed findings from interpretation. No officially published scientific report has concluded that the camera entered Noah's Arkansas. The available images remain limited, and experts continue debating whether the observed features represent natural geological formations or remnants of an ancient structure. Still, the possibility alone has kept interest alive. Supporters argue that multiple pieces of evidence appear to point in the same direction. The formation closely matches the biblical dimensions. Radar surveys reveal internal patterns unlike typical landslides. Soil chemistry differs from surrounding areas. Possible petrified material has been identified. Combined together, they believe these findings deserve serious scientific investigation. Skeptics reach a different conclusion. Many geologists argue that volcanic regions can produce surprisingly regular formations through natural processes involving lava flows, tectonic activity, erosion, and mineral replacement. They caution that human brains naturally recognize familiar shapes, even where none actually exist, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. To them, the boat outline and apparent internal divisions may simply reflect unusual but entirely natural geology. The debate remains unresolved because neither side possesses definitive proof. If the buried object truly contains preserved wood, reliable laboratory dating and microscopic analysis would be essential before extraordinary conclusions could be accepted. Likewise, if the formation proves entirely geological, comprehensive excavation and published research should eventually demonstrate that as well. Meanwhile, another aspect of the mystery continues to capture public imagination. Turkey officially recognizes the Durupinar Formation as a site connected with the Noah's Ark tradition, and the surrounding area has long attracted tourists, pilgrims, and researchers. However, official recognition as a cultural or historical landmark does not mean authorities have confirmed that the formation is the biblical Ark itself. Instead, it acknowledges the site's historical importance within local tradition and global interest. Political circumstances have also complicated scientific work. The region lies close to sensitive international borders, meaning research permits, equipment transport, and long-term excavation projects often require extensive government approval. Over the decades, changing political conditions have delayed or interrupted numerous expeditions, making continuous investigation difficult. Despite these obstacles, interest has steadily increased as technology improves. Modern imaging systems, 3D mapping, geochemical testing, and microscopic laboratory techniques now allow researchers to gather information impossible to obtain only a generation ago. Instead of relying on speculation alone, scientists can compare physical evidence using increasingly sophisticated methods. Even so, caution remains essential. Many sensational videos circulating online claim researchers have already confirmed Noah's Ark, discovered preserved wooden chambers, or uncovered shocking hidden artifacts. At present, none of these claims has been verified through peer-reviewed scientific publication. Dramatic headlines often blend confirmed observations with speculation, making it difficult for viewers to distinguish fact from fiction. The strongest verified points remain relatively straightforward. A large boat-shaped formation exists in eastern Turkey. Its dimensions are broadly comparable to biblical descriptions of Noah's Ark. Ground-penetrating radar has identified unusual subsurface features. Researchers continue studying soil chemistry and recovered samples. Beyond those observations, nearly every major conclusion remains under investigation. That uncertainty has done little to reduce public fascination. The story of a worldwide flood appears in traditions from many ancient civilizations. Mesopotamian texts describe catastrophic floods long before the Hebrew Bible was compiled. Similar narratives appear in Greek mythology, Hindu tradition, and numerous indigenous cultures across the world. Although these stories differ in important details, they share common themes of destruction, survival, and renewal. Historians continue debating why flood traditions appear so widely. Some suggest they preserve distant memories of real regional flooding events experienced by early civilizations. Others believe they developed independently because floods represented one of humanity's most devastating natural disasters. Whatever the explanation, the persistence of these stories has ensured continuing interest in every possible clue connected to Noah's Ark. For researchers working at the Durupinar site, the challenge is clear. Science demands evidence that can be tested, repeated, and independently verified. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. A remarkable shape, intriguing radar scans, and unusual soil chemistry may justify further research, but they cannot alone settle one of history's oldest debates. Future investigations may provide clearer answers. Researchers hope to obtain additional core samples, perform more detailed microscopic analyses, improve underground imaging, and, if permission is granted, expand carefully controlled excavations. Radiometric dating, chemical testing, and structural analysis could eventually reveal whether the buried material originated from natural geological processes or from something constructed by human hands. Until then, the Durupinar Formation remains suspended between archaeology, geology, history, and faith. For believers, it represents one of the strongest candidates yet discovered for the resting place of Noah's Ark. For skeptics, it serves as another reminder that extraordinary appearances can emerge naturally and that scientific conclusions must rest on verifiable evidence rather than expectation. Regardless of which view ultimately proves correct, one fact is undeniable. The mystery continues to inspire new research more than 60 years after the formation first attracted worldwide attention. Perhaps future discoveries will finally settle the question that has fascinated explorers for generations. Or perhaps the mountain will continue guarding its secret, leaving humanity to wonder whether one of history's greatest stories still lies hidden beneath the earth, waiting for science to uncover the truth. Until definitive evidence emerges, the Durupinar Formation remains exactly what it has always been, a remarkable archaeological mystery that challenges both believers and skeptics to keep searching, questioning, and following the evidence wherever it may lead.